name's Toby Moss, and I'm Chief Commercial Officer at a company called Worn Again Technologies. The company is based in the UK, and we have a subsidiary in Switzerland where we're operating our pilot facility, which demonstrates our ability to recycle polycotton textile waste. Our mission as a company is to eliminate textile waste, and for us to do that, we are particularly interested in the issue of post-consumer textile waste, of which polycottons as a fabric are a very important part of the waste composition. So we've developed a technology that is able to process mixed inputs that contain polyester and cotton and extract the polyester and the cellulose as reusable raw materials. In the case of the polyester, we are extracting that as a raw resin, and that resin is then available to be converted back into polyester fibers via extrusion, melt spinning. In the case of the cotton that is converted into a cellulose, at the moment we're developing a wet spinning capability where we can convert that cellulose directly into a lyocell fiber. Traditional recycling technologies really do struggle with blended fibers. You find some more kind of advanced mechanical recycling techniques that can deal with a small amount of contamination, but really what Worn Again is trying to do is deal with fabrics where you have large compositions of both polyester and cotton contained within the fabric. You could think about, for example, a 50-50 blend of the two materials. That would be very difficult for traditional recycling technologies to deal with. And so we've really had to go down the chemical route. The trouble when you deal with recycling two materials is that you really need to develop a system that's able to treat both at the same time. A lot of traditional recycling techniques basically extract one of the materials and then they have a challenge when it comes to keeping the other material intact or of a high enough quality so that it's then also extractable. We faced that challenge ourselves, and we've had to overcome those challenges by optimization of the various chemicals that are used within our process so that we can produce a product that has a virgin equivalent quality or better, and also in a way that we are able to maintain the quality of the chemicals that we use. So what we like to do is keep the chemicals inside the chemical plant and not in the product or in any of our waste streams. And therefore, we've had to work very hard when it comes to separation technology and solvents in a way that means that they're reusable again and again. That a lot of recycling technologies are currently still at a similar scale to ours or even less mature than that. There's only, a small number of commercial or industrial demonstrations of chemical recycling when it comes to textiles. And we're up against a pretty big challenge because of the economics of scaling technologies. They need a lot of investment. And without that investment, you don't get to a large scale capacity that is needed to drive down the unit cost of that processing. Really do need the ability to sort of kickstart the system in a way that drives investment into scaling up the infrastructure such that over the medium to long term, we can be competitive with, virgin equivalent pricing for the products. Without that, it seems fairly challenging for anybody economically to exist within the market. If you take the case of polyester, we've been producing that. It's the largest fiber that's produced globally. And globally, we've been producing that for 70 years. So obviously, the infrastructure for producing that is very, very optimized. And you get situations where, for example, you have polyester spinning facilities that are back integrated into oil refineries, which means that the economics that can be generated out of those systems is incredibly competitive. Meanwhile, a lot of those fossil-based systems are not accounting for their environmental impact, and there isn't yet a global standard on the cost of that environmental impact. So, for example, we see things like carbon border adjustment mechanisms, which are trying to take account of the carbon that's produced as a result of the fossil-based virgin systems. Those are still in their immaturities. We need to see sort of both a kickstart in the systems that we're producing as innovators, but we also need to see the incumbent infrastructure actually paying for some of the environmental damage that it's doing. We are currently focused on optimizing and processing post-consumer materials, and we see the consumption hubs really being as the place where we should be installing recycling facilities, as we think it's a moral imperative that economies that produce post-consumer waste should be dealing with it at source. It's also an economic reality that we should be doing that, because it's better to be processing and upgrading materials into higher value opportunities such that they can then be transported. I think when it comes to Bangladesh, the opportunity there is as a manufacturer, they're consuming a lot of textile raw materials, and there's the opportunity therefore to import those materials into Bangladesh that are recycled elsewhere in the consumption hub, so that they can be made available to and plugged into the downstream players that Bangladesh is serving in the garment and brand retailer parts of the value chain. Primarily, we're a European company. We spend a lot of our time trying to develop the advanced textile recycling in deployments in Europe. We also see that there is probably the most advanced regulatory structures being put in place by the Europeans when it comes to the amount of recycled content going into new textiles. We see that as a potential game changer in reshaping the fashion industry, because clearly Europe is a very large consumer of textiles, apparel, home textiles that are produced elsewhere. And, if they get the regulation right, that could have ripple effects in the value chain. And hopefully that will then result in a large amount of rewiring of the way that these materials are moved from source to end product. Ultimately, what we want to do is take raw materials that are currently either farmed or from fossil fuels and convert those into raw materials that come from waste. And we'd very much like to see a situation where there is a large amount of textile waste being diverted into that, instead of ending up in controlled and uncontrolled landfill or being incinerated, which is a major waste of those materials. So, there needs to be, I think, a very large amount of investment in infrastructure, and the products that we're producing as recycling companies then need to be deployed and taken up by the textile value chain, so that we can really drive a lot of this material into new products. And hopefully we get to the point where you don't even need to mention on a product that it's recycled, because it's just the normal. Like that, the vision is that we have no waste and it's all being converted into something useful.